welcome to Chiswickbuzz Book Club. I'm Diane Chandler, a local author, and I'm joined tonight, she's up there on my left, by Stephanie Zia, who's a publisher of Blackbird Books, and Ruth, who has also gone AWOL, actually, I think. She's lost. And Ruth works in TV drama, and together we host the Chiswickbuzz Online Book Club. And tonight is a really special occasion, a special session of Chiswickbuzz Book Club for two reasons. Firstly, because it will be streamed during Chiswick Book Festival. And secondly, and more importantly, because we have the pleasure of Amanda Craig, a fabulous author, for a whole hour. So normally our sessions are half an hour of chit chat, and then sometimes the author may come in at the end, but tonight we've got Amanda to ourselves for the whole hour. And I know that you've got lots of questions for her. Welcome, Amanda. You can hear us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I better put the phone here, hadn't I?
No, I can hear you fine.
Oh, you can? I just leave it like this. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to be chatting about Amanda's latest novel, which is The Golden Rule, which is this little beauty here, and also about the world of books in general. And if any of you have joined us and not managed yet to read The Golden Rule, but you loved The Lie of the Land, her last book, as I did, then feel free to ask questions about that too. I think you're game for anything really tonight, aren't you, Amanda?
Yes, you can ask me anything within certain rules.
We're all very respectable. So welcome everybody as well. I think many of our regulars are here, but also some newcomers. It's really nice to see some new faces. And as I say, I'm sure you've all got questions for Amanda. Amanda, we're a book club you can dip in and out of, really, as the book takes your fancy. But we're all avid readers. And I'd like to quote something from The Golden Rule, where I think it's Hannah who says, "Talking about books is, for passionate readers, the next best thing to reading them." I don't know if you remember that line. That could be our mantra, really. But in fact, our mantra really is words with wine in W4. So I wonder if you've all got a tip on the go. Cheers, everybody. Welcome. First of all, to your new novel, The Golden Rule, Amanda. It's the story of two women who meet on a train and plot to murder each other's husbands. And as you say, Amanda, in this beautiful piece of prose, they swapped stories of their husbands' unkindness, as if over a campfire, warmed by the wickedness of men. I absolutely love that. And
it's strange how many women who are either going through divorce or who've been through divorce particularly love that sentence.
That particular line, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not actually, but I still loved it.
Good, thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed the novel, not least for its sumptuous Cornish setting, which made me want to visit again. I spent all my childhood holidays there. And generally the role that Cornwall plays throughout the book, and I'm sure there'll be chats about that tonight. There's also a lot of humour. I smiled at many places. And also for me, there was something of the fairy tale about the novel. Beauty and the Beast, which I see you alluded to at the end, but also for me there was a hint of Cinderella,
yes,
with her cleaning and that Dior dress at the end. So I also loved your fabulous observations and the imagery that I also loved so much in the novel I first came to you through, which was The Lie of the Land. You've been called a State of the Nation author too, and I'm sure we'll touch on those aspects of your writing tonight. But just to kick off and settle us all in, I'd just like to ask you quite simply, first of all, what was it that compelled you to write this particular novel?
Well, it's one of those rare novels. I mean, I can see quite a lot of other novelists and writers here, and you'll know that usually you struggle for a long time to get an idea. But this novel, The Golden Rule, was one of those rare ones that just came to me in a sort of flash, and it came over a lunch with a girlfriend who had just told me that she couldn't decide whether or not to divorce her husband. She discovered that this man that she'd been married to for as long as I'd been married to my husband, which is 30 years, and had 3 children with, had been cheating on her throughout their marriage. And she was utterly devastated by this. But one of the second things that had really shocked her was discovering the whole money aspect to marriage, and how very much poorer she was going to be as a result of something that she hadn't done, you know, that he'd done to her. And she said to me, it would be so much easier to be a widow. And this was the third time that a woman friend had sat down in tears with me over lunch and said those very words. And the third time I heard them, I thought, this is extraordinary. I've got to write about this. And that was what gave me the idea. And I'd recently reread Patricia Highsmith's Strangers on a Train, and it just popped into my head the whole plot of two women rather than two men plotting to kill each other's husbands. And because the train that I know best is the Paddington to Penzance train, that perhaps some people here may also be familiar with, that, you know, I realized that I had to set it in the West Country, not in Devon, where I'd set The Lie of the Land, but in Cornwall as the furthest distance away that you could travel. And it all just followed from there. You know, one or two people, very few, have said they found that plot implausible. And I can only assume that they're people who have either not been divorced themselves or don't know anybody who is, because it's my observation. I mean, this is not at all from my personal life, thank God. But when people are going through divorce, and for some time after, they're in so much agony and confusion that they contemplate doing the most extraordinary things, and they have long, even if they don't necessarily carry them out, they have these long, detailed fantasies about what they would like to do to their ex. I take it as a tribute to either women's moral superiority or their cleverness that so few of us seem to get, you know, caught for offing our exes, because, you know, rather a lot of men seem to go in for it.
So you feel there might be women out there who've got away with it scot-free?
I'm quite sure there are, yes.
Well, certainly the wickedness of men comes through in the character of Jake, doesn't it? And whereas the goodness of women comes through very much in the character of Hannah, I think. Let me ask Steph first, before we open it up. We'll ask Stephanie and Ruth to tell us their general impressions of the book, and if they've got a question for you, Amanda.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, well, hi, thanks. It's lovely to meet you. I've read A Vicious Circle, Lie of the Land, and very much enjoyed this one. I could really identify with Hannah. I'm from West Country, working class background, went to very posh BBC at 16. And what I really like about your books is how you always write about money, very clearly, very honestly, especially the lack of it, which I can also very much identify with as a single mother later in life with no job and no money. So there was a lot I could identify with, and I just love the detail you go into on that. Like just, you know, when she nearly misses a train and the ticket's going to be invalid, and that's awful feeling. And I think we, you know, a lot of us have had that, you know, and the unforeseen circumstances, as you put it, after, you know, even though she gets child maintenance, there's all these bits are coming in, and you're trying to balance the credit card, and it's constant. It's never off your mind, and that was all conveyed brilliantly, I thought. And I know that you used to work as a cleaner, and I just wondered if you could tell us how much of your own experience was.
Well, I absolutely used. I only worked as a cleaner for about a year. But you know, I was lucky. I was a university graduate, and I realized that there were other things I could do. But in many ways, this is my most autobiographical novel, in that, like Hannah, I also read English at university. Like Hannah, I joined an advertising agency, and like Hannah, I found it a completely toxic environment. You know, much in the same way as Hannah, you know, terrible, terrible sexual harassment and just sort of general nastiness of a kind that, you know, we all know that things like Mad Men are a fantasy, but I can't tell you how distant they are from the real brutality of that world. And whether because I was very young and naive and vulnerable, I don't know, or whether because we're talking about a world that existed over 30 years ago. But like Hannah, I left that job and another one after in a similar sort of setup, and I became a cleaner. It was the only thing I could think of that, you know, I could do that wouldn't occupy my brain. I could just do it almost like a robot. So some of the things that happened to Hannah and that were said to Hannah were said to me, and I was absolutely astonished by the way that, you know, stepping out of the professional world and into this world of service, as it used to be called, somehow made people see me and treat me totally differently, and as if I was stupid. I mean, just appalling things. I mean, ranging from people not forgetting to pay me to, you know, treating me like a kind of object. It was really horrible. There were one or two nice employers that I, you know, became quite fond of, but I never forgot how dreadful that felt. And I was still very kind of poor and living hand to mouth for a long time after that. And it seems to me that people in fiction, particularly nowadays, don't write nearly enough about money and this great gulf. And I feel this terribly passionately, that it's part of the reason why so many people are exploited and humiliated, because, you know, money is the new sex. People don't discuss it. You know, you tend to know all sorts of things about people's love lives now, which the Victorians never mentioned. The stuff that they did talk about from Jane Austen on, which was money and how much people earned and had inherited and all the rest of it, is completely taboo to discuss. And I think that there's something really nasty about the modern world and not talking about that, because people's embarrassment and shame, particularly if you're a woman, means that you are more likely to be exploited. I don't think we should be ashamed of talking about money. You know, we live in a democracy. We are all supposed to be equal. Of course, you know, some of us may consider that what a surgeon does is more important than what, I don't know, a baker does, but that should be discussed, not swept under the carpet.
No, brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Brought out into the, you have some great cameos actually of cleaners' employers in the book, of Hannah's employers, don't you? Yes. From the very nice to the very nasty. So Ruth, are you back with us, Ruth?
I am, yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. Technology seems to be going.
I think Amanda infected me.
Sorry?
I think Amanda infected me with her problem.
Oh, yes, there's obviously some glitch, isn't there?
So do you want to tell us what you thought of the book and maybe ask a question of Amanda?
No, just picking up from what you were just saying, Amanda, you know, I mean, I really enjoyed the fairy tale element of the book and the way that you set it against very contemporary issues, not just money as we're discussing, but you know, you really tackle some very sort of brave contemporary issues, you know, Brexit, the gentrification of the seaside, and the marginalisation of maybe the local people, unfair financial behaviour during separations, divorce, which we've discussed, sexism in the workplace, domestic abuse. I mean, did you have to edit yourself when you were writing this book, or did you let rip? Because there's an awful lot in there.
No, I don't let rip. I mean, I am, as you can probably tell, horribly opinionated about absolutely everything. So for me, in a way, the struggle is to damp down my own views and listen to what various different characters want to say. So, you know, I myself am ardently against Brexit, but I completely acknowledge the sentiments and views of people who feel very differently. And I do give those to Hannah's cousin, you know, who is Cornish and who, you know, actually has really some of the most powerful arguments for leaving the EU. I happen to think they're wrong, personally, but I respect them. And I understand that they're very passionately held. And I do myself actually think that the Cornish and the Cornish fishermen have been horribly badly treated. So I'm not trying to lecture anybody, but I'm trying to bring these things out into the open and to dramatize them and to make them part of the characters. It's a tremendously difficult thing to weave all these things into a work of fiction and to make that work. It takes a lot of, you know, mental and emotional energy, but I'm not trying to cram things in. That would be, I think, very boring for readers and a bit disastrous artistically. But I suppose when I'm writing, I am very fully engaged with the characters and the world in which they're living. So it kind of grows out of that. Does that help explain it?
Yes, it does. And also, you know, you are applauded in your previous works of being a very socially aware author and incorporating that into your work. So, you know, it's to credit to you that you're brave and that you take on these challenges. But I was just wondering, in terms of, you know, in terms of the story and the characters and the narrative, do you ever feel a conflict as to, you know, how do you balance that sort of being loyal to the fictional character and getting the point across at the same time?
Well, the thing that is most important of all is the story and the plot, and to propel that forward through your characters is, I think, you know, a novelist's first duty. I should add, it's also very, very unfashionable. There are lots of novels that are just as acclaimed as mine and laden with prizes, which I never get, that don't tell stories, that are about characters and style and writing and theme, but absolutely not about telling a story. So I do think that what I do is quite old-fashioned, but in a way it's so old-fashioned it's also quite avant-garde. Yeah. You know, if any of you know works by people like Trollope and Dickens and Balzac, you know, all those wonderful Victorian novelists, really what I'm trying to do is what they did, which is to tell a very strong story with very vivid characters that is also about the way we live now. So it's complicated.
I have to say that one of the moments I laughed out loud in the book was when I think it's Hannah's cousin says to her, "What has the EU ever done for us?"
But they do.
The whole litany of, well, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. Yeah. I thought that, I mean, you know, I share your politics, and I thought that was quite hilarious. And maybe we'll touch more a little bit on that. But I'd like to open it up now. Is this phone holding thing working okay, or can you actually hear it?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, but I need to hear other people's questions a bit more distinctly.
Okay, so who's got a question for Amanda?
I don't mind going first.
Who's this? Sorry.
Sangeeta. Hello.
Hi, Amanda.
Off you go.
So I quite like that idea. I was wondering, have you done any more research? Are we getting more tips on how to, you know, in a much easier way?
How to kill your husband, are you asking?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Well, I went through quite a few. You know, there's the obvious ones of poison, pushing them off a cliff, pushing them off a ladder. You know, I think the best murders are quite spur of the moment. You know, and I think, you know, I've said in an interview in The Observer that I think everybody is capable of murder, if sadly, if there is the chance and there is the perceived need. I mean, I think most women, for example, would murder to protect a child, their child, wouldn't they? And I think a great many men would also kill to protect their wife or partner. You know, you can think of hundreds of different situations in which even the most gentle and peaceable person would do something utterly terrible. And I think that's why we're all so fascinated by it, because we all feel that thing, that possibility in ourselves. You know, I was actually confronted with the situation when I found a burglar in my study, when I was finishing, actually no, not finishing, but in the middle of a novel called Hearts and Minds. And it was in the days before the cloud, and this burglar was trying to steal my laptop, and I hadn't backed it up, or not enough. And I knew that if he took this laptop, I would lose years of work. And there was an additional problem, which is that my son was downstairs, and this enormous man was, you know, quite obviously a real threat to him as well as to my book. And I fought this man all through my study out into the hall and pinned him. He was 6'3". He was about, you know, 18. And somewhere I found the strength and the violence to pin him against the banisters. And luckily my husband was also in the house, and he raced up the stairs. And this man then got away from us. But in the moment that I had him pinned against the banisters, I knew that if I'd had any weapon in my hand, including just a rock, I would have killed him. And which is a terrifying thing to understand. But I think many, many people in that situation might have done the same thing. I mean, it's why anybody sensible is against having guns in the house, because quite apart from the likelihood you might shoot dead a member of your own family by mistake, if you have a gun, well, it's like, I think Chekhov said, you know, if you've got a gun on the stage, it's going to go off and something terrible will happen.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that's really interesting. But, you know, when you are defending yourself, it probably, you know, would come and you'd probably defend yourself doing that. But if you're planning, premeditating, then maybe, you know, you have the heart or not to do that. I also just wanted to say, you know, you had some quotes on the front of the book. And one of them was, the golden rule is that there is no golden rule. And I wish they had taught that in school. You know, why do they teach you all these rules and follow this rule and that rule? And then, you know, we have to learn and, you know, decide on some things. But I definitely like that. I think it was by George Bernard.
Well, good. You know that the golden rule, I mean, some people don't know what it means. They think it's a mathematical term or something to do with a king or queen. But it is a universal moral imperative that is in all religions, from Hinduism to Islam to Judaism to Christianity to Buddhism. which is basically that we should treat each other as we would wish to be treated ourselves. And it's such a simple rule, but it's you know, at the heart of you know, fiction as well as of civilized society. So I was very pleased to find that title. But of course, as Bernard Shaw, who said there is no golden rule, said, you know, he was a great cynic. That's why he said there is no golden rule.
No, I like that. I think I'm taking the title with me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sangeeta. Who else has got a question? Janice, can you unmute? There you go.
Hi.
But
Hi, Amanda. I
is he
really...
dead?
Can you hear me?
No.
Keep going, because I think it's coming through on the phone.
Can
Can you hear
me
Amanda?
now, Amanda?
No.
Okay.
Can you relay it, Diane?
Yes. It's funny though, because it was coming through earlier, wasn't it? Let's try and put the sound up a bit. Try again, Janice. Can you hear me, Amanda?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Cool.
Good. Good. I'll try and speak up then. I love the book. I didn't think I was going to be honest, at the beginning, because I don't really like crime thrillers. But then reading on, you just turn it so brilliantly so that it becomes not a crime thriller. And that intrigued me. But the point I wanted to bring up was how you found a use for the taser that had been virtually a hole in her bag all those weeks and months, and how she brilliantly uses it to help her lovely neighbor defend herself against her abusive husband, and then her quick thinking in getting rid of it. I mean, her sort of working that out. I thought it was stunning. Well done.
Thank you very much. Well, I was very pleased when I did think of that, because I knew that I had to use the taser. I mean, when you have a weapon in a book, you have to use it. Otherwise, your readers are very disappointed. But that particular wrinkle of the plot didn't come to me till quite late. And being able to use the rat hole in the flat also pleased me a lot. That was a real rat hole. It was in an ex-council flat that my son and his friends rented when they were at university.
That's amazing. Anybody else got a question at this point? Sue, welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
Hello, Sue.
Unmute. Just unmuting. Hello, Amanda. I haven't been to one of Diane's book groups before, so this is a great start to me. And I wanted to say that I really enjoyed your book. I couldn't put it down. I found the story really, very fast moving. I was very disappointed when I had to go to bed because it was so late. We had 20 pages left to read. But I did read the last 20 today. And what I wanted to ask you was how you would describe the genre, because Janice just described it as a crime thriller. And I do think it's a thriller, I agree. But I read a very interesting article recently which put thrillers into 4 categories, which you might have heard of: Western, Eastern, Northern, Southern, about crime thrillers. Now, I don't think yours fits into any of those, but I wondered, what you thought.
What an interesting question. I would say that I would hope I defy all these genres, because I love them all. I love crime, I love detective fiction, I love romance. There are lots of, I love fairy tales, I love children's books. And to me, a really rich and interesting book combines many different genres. And in fact, it's one of the quarrels that I have with the way that modern fiction is published now, that people keep trying to cram it into particular genres. And I think really good books actually continually escape that, and always have done. I mean, if you look at classic fiction, something like Jane Eyre, what on earth is that? Is it a crime story? Because, you know, it's definitely got crime in it. Is it a romance? Is it a ghost story? Is it, you know, social realism? Because it's got lots about how awful it is to be a governess. I mean, I think that all good books, you know, you can't categorize them, but you can hope that people who like one or other category will at least try it. Yeah. You know, I don't think you should be prescriptive, is what I mean. I always say that I don't like historical fiction. I'm one of the more well-known refuseniks about Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. But actually, there's lots of historical fiction I absolutely love. So really, I'm not even faithful to my own tastes. It's just the individual books.
Yeah. Thank you.
Diana.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Dan. I can hardly hear you.
Sorry, I'm a very, very big fan. Can you hear me?
I've completely lost the sound.
Okay. Have you got it again now, Amanda?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Okay, I'm a very big fan, Amanda. Have been since Foreign Bodies. I've read all of your books. And this, to me, The Golden Rule is up there with A Vicious Circle and your first book, Foreign Bodies. I just wondered, I want to expand it out a bit though, because with the, you know, you've had a difficult time in the literary world. You're incredibly talented. Your characterization is just amazing. I am a divorced woman. I did want to kill my husband. I even fantasized about my funeral outfit. You know, I was there by the graveside at one point. I didn't, and I'm very glad that I didn't.
I'm glad you didn't too.
Yeah, but just going back to A Vicious Circle and the literary world that you so cleverly characterize, has it improved for you personally, the literary world and how you are regarded? I don't know if the rest of the book clubbers know, but your first novel, it was lost by your agent, and then could you just describe to us, you know, the...
Well, it was part of a long
questions. How have you managed to keep going? It's just, you're brilliant.
Well, thank you very much. You know, and it's terribly nice when I meet so many lovely, enthusiastic readers who seem to enjoy my work. But yeah, it's been a 30-year struggle right from the start. And yes, one of the very worst moments came when I won a prize as a young journalist and was approached by a very famous and senior literary agent called Deborah Rogers, who's now dead, who asked to see, who'd heard, you know, I was interviewed because of this prize, who'd heard that I was writing a novel and asked to see it. And I was so naive and also so poor, because in those days photocopying cost a fortune and I was not working in an office, that I sent her the only copy of what became Foreign Bodies. And she was a very charming woman, but utterly chaotic. And she lost it.
Oh, dear.
And people don't believe this story, but she did. She lost it. And I sat down and I rewrote the whole thing again. And I then sent it off to another agent, and it was sold to my first publisher. And she rang me up about a month before it was published saying, I've just discovered the manuscript of your first novel and I think it's rather good. Do you have an agent? So I was able to tell her that indeed I did now have an agent, and I did now have a publisher, and it was appearing very shortly. And I've often thought what would have happened if I'd gone with her instead, because she was undoubtedly a very, very powerful and charismatic and wonderful literary agent. She was the agent for people like Ishiguro, and she founded her own agency. And I'm sure that had I had her as my agent, instead of the young woman that I went to, the reception of foreign bodies might have been very different, because I also had an utterly terrible reception for it. It's quite rare for a first novel to be trashed, but mine was. In the most devastating way. It got an absolutely hideous review, a very big review, but dreadful, in the Sunday Times a week before publication. And that just killed it, stone dead, and jolly nearly killed me too. You know, I lost a baby. I had the most terrible year in which I was so depressed that I could hardly get out of bed. And it took many, many years to get any confidence back. But I did nevertheless write my second novel in that year that was better received. And, you know, I just went on plodding. You know, I'm afraid that, you know, people think that being an artist or a writer is a lovely life. It's really not. It is a vacation, and vacations are painful things for you, and also, I should add, for your family. You know, it does involve a lot of suffering. If you're lucky, you know, things get better, and eventually things have got better for me. I have no idea how I'm seen in the literary world. I think a loose cannon would be one of the phrases, but you know, I'm supportive of many other writers, and I've been very lucky because they've also been very supportive to me, and that means much more to me than the nice reviews that I now get in The Guardian, the Sunday Times, etc. But it's not a career that I would recommend to anybody. It's something that you should only do if you feel you absolutely have to, and there's no other choice. Sorry if that's too depressing.
No, it's okay. I just sort of wondered if you felt it had improved at all, the literary world. There was so much scrapping, wasn't there, back in the 1990s? Do you remember Martin Amis with Whoever? And it was getting so nasty. And then you had
very
all
unhelpful that. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the fact that both the literary world and the newspaper world are now so embattled, I think that has made people perhaps a bit kinder to each other. You know, which is quite interesting, because the most vicious world that I know of is the world of poets. I'm absolutely astonished by the nasty things that a lot of poets will say about each other. And I've always presumed that this is because there's even less money in poetry than there is in fiction. Whereas people in film tend to be quite nice about each other.
You're not a fan of Amazon, are you? Who is?
I'm not a fan of Amazon. I mean, Amazon is wonderful for loads of people because it will deliver books straight to your door, and it was one of the first that offered that. And they seem marvelously cheap compared to the prices in bookshops. And, you know, it's so easy, you just buy something at the click of a button. But, you know, when you sup with the devil, you should have a long spoon, because what Amazon is also doing, you know, by discounting books, is it's taking away that margin that authors and publishers really, really need in order to stay in business. You know, I'm very open about the fact that though I'm supposed to be kind of successful, I now earn a third of what I did 20 years ago, and I earn less than half the minimum wage. Now, nobody can continue to live on that sum. I'm only able to keep writing because my husband supports me. But that's not a situation that is really justifiable. You know, you shouldn't have to live on somebody else's income and charity, not if you're doing this as a professional person. And, you know, serious writing is not a hobby. You know, you're doing this for a living as well as to realize a vocation. So I think that somehow this needs to be squared. Of course, it's not only Amazon that is the problem. There are other things, chief of which was the abolition of something, just to get a bit technical, called the Net Book Agreement, which we got rid of more or less at the same time 30 years ago that I became a novelist. And that made it legal to discount books. That was the beginning of the end, because actually books are far too cheap. You know, you think of what a theatre ticket costs. It's 3 times what a book does at the very least. And it's 3 times that even in subsidized theatre usually, because that's actually what it costs. And we don't, you know, we wince when we pay 30 quid for a ticket, or 50 quid, or even 100 quid. But actually, that is the true cost. Now, I don't think anybody's going to be paying £100 or £50 or even £30. But, you know, the difference between earning £12.99 for a hardback book and £25 is quite a lot. And that is what we actually need. So I feel quite despairing about the future of my world, because it shouldn't just be a world for people who, you know, have successful husbands or private incomes. It should be a world for everybody. And there are a lot of people who've got really interesting stories that we need to hear, like perhaps Stephanie's, that we're not going to hear if they can't actually afford to write them.
Yeah, very true.
Can I just interject there? Can I just say, Amanda, do you think with lockdown, and you know, the reason this book club initially started, you know, bless Diane and Stephanie, was because, you know, we wanted to you know, we were all in an opportunity where we could read more. I certainly have read more fiction this year than I have in the last 10 years. And if that's
hooray!
That's come from lockdown, then that's great. And I've paid for it. You know, I've got your hardback copy that I paid for. So, so do you think, you know, I appreciate what you say, but in terms of where we're at over the last 4 or 5 months, do you think that in a way we've all got so used to it now, we'll carry on? And maybe there is one of the great small bonuses of this awful year is that we're all going to carry on reading, and we are more engaged with fiction, and we are more willing to buy it because we can't go to the theatre, we can't go and see live music. You know, the 2000 rave round my field I can't go to anymore. Is that not a positive to take from it?
Yeah, that would be fantastic if it continued. You know, I don't care how people read. I think all reading is wonderful. It does things to your brain and to your understanding of the world that nothing, not even film, I think can do. You know, it gets right inside your head. It makes your imagination work and your feelings well up in a way that's quite unique. So if as a result of lockdown and all this fear and suffering and loneliness, people do really rediscover reading and book buying, or book borrowing, because I'm very keen people should borrow from libraries too, then that is a very serious ray of hope. And, you know, I hope you're right that this does continue. You know, I also long for all the other arts to return, not just reading. But yeah, it would be great. And it's great that people are getting together to talk about books and think about books. You know, this is fantastic. This is what literature used to be like 100 years ago, when people would read Dickens round the fireside to each other and all that. You know, that really existed, that world.
And also it would be fantastic if the penny would drop for, you know, the multi-millions of us, I'm one, who watch Netflix, etc. But the often the amount of very good drama comes directly from books. They are the original source ideas.
Yeah,
Not always, there's a lot of reality, but if people would understand that more, you know, would sort of take that on board and either watch the Netflix film or series first and then turn to the book, or the other way around. It would be a very good thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, some of us did that with normal people, didn't we? We some of us read the book and then we watched it. Some of us watched it and then read the book. Amanda, how do you feel about having your novels televised? Because a Golden Rule could be a good drama serial, couldn't it?
Every one of my novels has been optioned for film or television at some time, and not one has been made. The Lie of the Land is quite advanced in its script development, so who knows, that may happen, that may be the one. You know, A Vicious Circle was optioned and re-optioned and re-optioned for, I think, well over a decade by the maker of Bridget Jones's Diary, who would have done a lovely job. But it's a bit like being struck by lightning, I'm afraid. You know, you just can't tell. And it seems to me that for things to actually happen, you need both enormous luck and some huge star to decide they want to play a particular character. And you know, a publicity campaign of the kind that I've never been lucky enough to have. And even then it can, you know, not happen or blow up in your face. But I would absolutely love it. And I love television, good television. I think it's another very interesting art form. You know, personally, I thought that, for instance, the dramatization of Normal People was much, much better than the novel.
Yeah.
We all agree with that.
You know, obviously, other people will feel differently.
I think it's very rare, isn't it, when a TV adaptation or a film is better than the novel, but that was definitely one instance for me. Just wondering, back to your point on booksellers, I wonder if we should make a pact here at the book club that going forwards we try and avoid Amazon and we try and buy from Waterstones, or even better, some of the independent bookstores. I think the problem is here, Amanda, is we've set quite a relentless pace for ourselves, really. Or I have.
Yeah.
And we've been meeting every 2 weeks. And I think now that lockdown is easing, we probably will move to monthly, or maybe at least 3 weeks, which might give us all a bit more time to find the book from a different outlet and, you know, and put money into the industry, as you're saying, which sounds perfectly sensible.
That would be lovely, and you know, somebody I would like to recommend to you. Well, there are two local Chiswick authors I'd like to recommend to you, both of whom are in paperback. If you wanted to not just have a diet of hardbacks, one of them is Vesna Goldsworthy, who's Monsieur Carr,
right, I can see.
and Gorski are wonderful local reworkings of The Great Gatsby and Anna Karenina, which I think you would find very interesting. And another is someone called Sadie Jones.
Oh, yes.
Whose The Snakes came out last year.
Yes, that's I have read Sadie, yeah. Has anybody else got a question, maybe about the book or about general book world? Pam, off you go.
I can't hear.
Sorry, Pam, you're unmuted now. Okay.
Sorry,
I was on now,
Amanda. So yeah, Amanda, I loved it, and I also divorced, also wanted to kill my ex, etc. Was also sexually harassed in my first job in a different industry, but it pretty much destroyed my confidence for a long time professionally. And kind of and what you said about you losing your confidence at one point in your career, it sort of all made sense, because one of the, I thought, the really beautiful themes that came through in such a subtle way was around that, you know, how you get your self-confidence back, you know, what it's like when you've lost it. I mean, it's kind you know, the journey that Hannah goes through in reclaiming her self-confidence, and also very delicately how she learns to trust again, because although she kind of knows that Stan's a good guy and he's different and he's experienced what she has, she still can't quite banish this fear that he's just going to turn out to be like Jake. I just thought it was beautiful. Yeah, beautiful and just very subtle the way you wove that in, and how she, you know, comes back in that sense. So thank you and well done.
I'm so pleased, Pam, because I think that this loss of confidence, or never having confidence in the first place, is the most gigantic battle that pretty much everybody, unless they are a kind of sociopath, has to fight in their life. And it's something that I feel really proud if my novels can help anybody at all to feel that it is possible, because to have no confidence or to have it taken away from you is the most dreadful feeling. You know, you feel utterly worthless and you have no energy. Very often I think you feel physically ill and stupid, you know, all those terrible, terrible things that frankly nobody should feel. You know, everybody is important, everybody is worth something, everybody has talents, but to find the confidence to express that and to march out, you know, to get out of bed and go out your front door, you know, we're all quite scared of leaving our homes at the moment, is one of the huge battles we all fight. You know, we all think because we grow up with fairy tales that it's about, you know, killing dragons and witches and fighting demons. Well, you know, those demons exist, but they're inside us. And it's one of the reasons why I believe that people need to endlessly reread things like fairy tales, because that is part of the deep wisdom that they can give us. And I think that I mean, Nabokov said this, all great novels are also great fairy tales. And, you know, that is the thing that we can really get, you know, apart from all the other things that fiction can give us, it's that confidence and that courage. You know, it is the life, you know, the work of a lifetime to find it and to keep it and to keep renewing it. But it is there. And, you know, I just hope you have found it again yourself.
Oh yes, many times. Comes and goes.
Good.
But yeah, but thank you. Yeah.
Christina, did you want to?
Sorry.
So, Christina.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very
Hello.
dimly.
Sorry. Well, I'm speaking from Yorkshire, so I'll try and be louder.
Yeah, that's a bit better.
Yes, I like Stephanie. Liked the way that you described what poverty is like, because, as you say, it's not very often described. But I also wanted to talk to you about your work ethic, how you write, really. I'm always fascinated by people saying they write in the morning, they write in the evening, they write every day, or I just wondered about how you do it.
Well, I try to do everything other than write. It's not a work ethic at all. So, you know, my house is never cleaner than when I've got a book underway, or my dog more exercised, and so on and so on. But I also have a very low boredom threshold. So usually, I mean, these days now my children are grown up. I didn't have to do the school run, which was a big chunk of my day. Usually I'm at my desk by 10 o'clock, 10:30, and I'm writing. Or rather, I'm staring into space and, you know, trying not to eat Brazil nuts. You know, eventually by about 2 o'clock, something has started to grind away. And then if I can, I will write at least until 6 o'clock. But it's hard to say. I mean, I wish I could say that I write every single day. I always try to write about 500 words. On a good day, I can write 2,000 or even 3,000 words, but then the next day there'll be nothing. So some of it's about pacing. The other thing I do that might be helpful to people who are aspiring writers is I keep a diary. And I think it's very important to keep a diary, not just because you're writing by hand is a good thing and it gets you going, but because it gets rid of your own personality. So into my diary, I will put all kinds of things, you know, just thoughts that I'm having or feelings, some of them quite nasty, because I've got to get rid of them before I can write. And that's very useful. I strongly suspect that someone like Elena Ferrante, who I greatly admire, does a similar thing. There's a kind of tell in the way that she writes about bad feelings that I think you only get if you keep a diary. But that's just a supposition.
Great, thank you, thanks.
Can I just ask a question about the gaming issue?
Yes.
In the book. So, because I've been following you on Twitter the last few weeks, and I saw one tweet that you wrote said that the book was also about how fiction and storytelling shape our lives, and how gaming is setting up a challenge to that. And I didn't know, as Hannah just didn't know, that when you're in a game, you can change the fate of everything in that game by choosing one decision as opposed to another one, and the games were so sophisticated that they have all these tangents that a player can go down on. And I also loved your ending, because they're sitting there watching this game and we don't know whether she's going to go back to Cornwall with Stan or whether she's going to stay with Maisie in London, and I thought it was a great ending. But did you kind of plot this in a similar way to gaming then? I mean, what can you say something about that, the gaming aspect of this?
Well, I'm not a gamer. You know, I can't take the adrenaline, but I'm good friends with someone who's called Naomi Alderman, who wrote The Power, and she is an amazing, amazing woman. You know, she's one of those people who, when you talk to her, you can feel your brain suddenly having to go up several gears. She's so clever. And she designed initially an app with a friend, which is called Zombies Run, which is a story that, you know, makes you exercise, because of course exercise is so deeply boring that you know, if you've got a story that tells you that zombies are after you and you've got to run 500 paces, you'll find yourself doing it much more effortlessly. Very clever idea. Anyway, Naomi, bless her, until she became a superstar with The Power, she made so much more money from this app than she ever did from her, you know, also rather successful fiction, that I became very intrigued by this world. And when I realized that actually the Golden Rule was partly about how storytelling affects and shapes our lives and our understanding of our lives, I thought that I had to bring in gaming. So she was terribly helpful. And the other person who was very helpful was my son, with whom I'd had a decade of fierce rows about the amount of gaming he was doing instead of his homework, and be reading. And some of the things that Stan says to Hannah, defending his art, and it is an art, my son said to me. And I was initially very skeptical about it. And then the more he explained, the more I thought, actually, this is fascinating. And it played into, you know, quite a modern preoccupation that we've seen much more in films like Groundhog Day and Sliding Doors and, you know, a whole lot of other things, you know, that Christopher Nolan's really gone ballistic with. The idea that lives can have multiple twists and multiple endings. And I thought that was such an interesting idea that I knew I had to use it, because of course there's a possibility that some people have got and others not, that Hannah herself is not just playing a game, she's in a game. She's in the game that Stan has designed. And, you know, some of that possibility may be quite sinister if you are of a gloomy cast of mind. I'm not of a gloomy cast of mind, so, you know, I'm fairly sure that things are going to end well. But if you wanted, you could see that ending as much darker.
Yeah. Personally, I love open endings, and I thought it was fabulous.
Thank you.
Who else might have a question for Amanda?
Sorry, again.
Diana, go on. She's a huge fan.
Yes, sorry. Amanda, I think I read somewhere that you often take minor characters or major characters into your next book. Do you have your next book on the go?
I do. Well, I do it with all my novels, actually, that I take minor characters and make them major ones. I do. I'm about 4 chapters into the next one, and it's set in the place of my very first novel in Foreign Bodies, Santorno, this fictional Tuscan town. And the characters that are being continued, well, they're really rather a lot of them actually by now, but the main characters are these 3 elderly ladies. There's Jake's grandmother, Diana Evenlode, who's a viscountess. There's Ruth Viner, who's the mother of Grub and Tom in A Private Place and A Vicious Circle, who's a retired psychiatrist. And there's Zan's grandmother, Marta, the pianist. And they are getting themselves embroiled in some pretty sort of dark stuff that is happening. Goody. By accident. It starts with a man shooting an intruder out of his bedroom window. But we'll have to find out what happens next.
Thank you.
I have to say that I was really delighted to find Zan as a minor character who had been in Live the Land.
Yes.
And I didn't recognise him. He's a flatmate of Hannah's, isn't he? And when I read your word at the back, I realised that was Zan from the previous novel that I'd loved so much, and which we can see behind Amanda here as a canvas on her wall. Can you see the cover of the Live the Land there? Behind Amanda, it's fantastic. Do we have any last questions before we wrap up? Anybody? Nobody waving a hand at me? Oksana. Unmute. There you go.
Hello, Amanda. It's not really a question. It's just to say that I really enjoyed the book. I find it very gripping. All the characters were very convincing. I especially liked the character of Bill Kenwood. And I found the party scene fascinating because it was so unexpected that they ended up in the cave. It was a really brilliant scene. You know, just as that was completely unexpected. And you know, the whole book was fascinating, and like Diane said, I enjoyed the ending as well. And when it referred to the fact that you could see Hannah's shadow in the window of the train, it could have gone either way. So that kind of was a bit sort of spine-tingling. But just the whole thing was really gripping, and like somebody else said, I couldn't put it down either. I really enjoyed it. But it's not really a question; it's a statement, really. But it was really good. It was wonderful.
That's so kind. Can I just just say, you know, if you have read it and enjoyed it, it's incredibly helpful if you're on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and say that, because
I will.
As I'm sure some of you know, there's this absolute crisis this week with 600 new books being published, and you know that I don't know what's going to happen to everybody, but there's a kind of horrible Darwinian struggle to get your book noticed and read and bought and all those awful things. And you know, if you have enjoyed it, it would be very helpful to me if you could say so. Anywhere, Goodreads, even Amazon is a
okay.
Yeah, even Amazon. It serves.
Even Amazon, I'm afraid.
Oh, is there one final question, or shall we let Amanda go? You've been with us for over an hour, actually. I'm just looking at the time. We've kept you far too long.
I've kept everything else.
Can I do a very light one?
But I can't read it.
Can I do a very light question?
Yes, go for it, yeah.
I think Amanda has done an amazing thing for hairy men. My question to you, Amanda, is this: if there are two men and they are equally charming, kind, intelligent, funny, possibly rich, one's hairy, one's not, which one would you want to snuggle into on a cliff?
Well, actually, I was thinking of the story of Jacob and Esau. The reason why Jake is called Jake is that, of course, it's from the Bible, and Jacob is actually, you know, he's the hero in the Old Testament story, but he's a complete snake to his poor, hardworking, hairy brother, who's just a thoroughly nice guy. I've always felt very cross about this.
Do you know, it wouldn't be Beauty and the Beast if he wasn't hairy, would it?
Absolutely.
Amanda, you've been such a joy to have as a guest tonight. Thank you so much.
Well,
good luck with the next book, and tons of luck with the TV adaptation of Lie of the Land. I'd love to see it on the screen. Thank you again. Thanks, Steph and Ruth, and thank you everybody for joining us. If you would like to join the book club, then it's one of these book clubs that you can hop in and hop out of as the book takes your fancy. We're giving you 3 weeks for the next one, and this little beauty will be the next book, Boy Swallows Universe. Has anybody read it? No, I promise you it's a good read. It is another coming of age, Sangeeta, but it's a fabulous book, and we should be doing this on Wednesday the 23rd, but we're hoping to have the author with us again, Trent Dalton, but he lives in Australia, so the date and time are to be confirmed for that. We would have to do it a bit later at 8 o'clock if we go with that with Trent. So thanks everybody. Lovely to have you here, Amanda. Thank you. And
thank you so much, Dan.
Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.